Hello. Some years ago, I decided to generate an Excel version of my gliding log book. And with help from Paul Cronk, Mark Rushton, and a lot of online training videos, I generated what I'm about to share with you now. Just bear me a moment while I share my screen. Now, I'm going to make this freely available to people. This is the latest version. It's gone through various updates over the years, but this is the latest version. Now, for those of you that have never seen it before, this will hopefully be very useful. And for those of you that have seen it before, I've made a few modifications to it, so that might be useful. This is a partially populated example sheet, because a completely blank one doesn't show you very much. So I've populated this example version with completely fictitious times and dates with the gliders that we've got at Welland, the gliders we've got in the fleet. But just to show you what we've got here, we've got an instruction sheet. Tells you, so obviously please read that before you do anything. I would suggest you read it down to this point here. And then when you've filled in a load of information, then start reading from there onwards. There's no point in reading this until you've filled in a load of information yourself. The log sheet is where you put virtually everything you're going to put into it. There are two exceptions to that, one of which is the glider type sheet. So we've got the current fleet entered here. You can enter any other gliders that you've flown in throughout your gliding career. And I've given you plenty of space to put plenty in there, because I've recently discovered that you can't take them out once you put them in. It throws a spanner in the works. Now, when I say you can't take them out, you can change the order. So clearly it's best to have the most, the ones you use more often at the top, and you can relegate ones that are in historical ones right down to the bottom of the list. And you can do that quite simply by copying here, pasting down the bottom, and then deleting at the top. Don't delete them at any time. So always have them in there. If you delete them, you'll throw spanners in the works. But as I say, older types can go down the bottom, and newer types put them at the top. I'll come back to this bit in a little while. Another place you can put information, these are the gliding clubs that we've got options on. So clearly we've got our own home base. I've also put Husbos in there. Any other gliding sites you've flown from, you can add in these fields here. Okay, going back to the log, which is where you put everything else in. You must not put anything in the grey columns. The grey columns are automatically filled in for you. If you are going back to the beginning of your gliding career, let's say you started in, let's say 1990, you'd have to put the date in reasonably full format. Let's say 6/9/90. And if I now use the right arrow or just click over here, that column, actually, that's interesting. I chose that. Let's go for another date. Actually, let's go for another year. Let's go 2000. Let's go 00. Okay, so that automatically fills in the year for you. You have to put the day, the month, and the year if it's not this year. If it's this year, so if you're doing a current entry for this year, let's get rid of that. So let's say if we're putting in today's date, if I put in 12/4 and hit the right arrow, it fills in the rest for me. It fills in the 0, and it fills in the year. It knows what year it is. Here, I've got a drop down for the glider registration. So if it's RK13, it's Huff. Put that in, and you'll notice that that field gets filled in for you automatically. Got a drop down here for the crew utility. So if you're under instruction, pilot under instruction, you drop down to the PUI. If you're pilot in charge solo, you choose that one. If you're pilot in charge and you're flying somebody else, so it's dual, but you're in charge, PIC D. I've added the S and the D to differentiate between the two types of crew capacity. Here we've got winch, aerotow, etc. And in case you need to break down what those actually are, you go back to the common data field that tells you what they are: winch, aerotow, self-launch, S for self-launch, B for bungee, M for auto tow, and TMG for touring motor glider. In most of my cases, it's winch and aerotow. This field here is where you enter your time, and to simplify entry, instead of typing 00:58 or 00:07 for 7 minutes, let's say, you just put 7 in, let's say, for 7 minutes and hit return. And you'll notice it automatically changes to 007, 00:07. If it's 1 hour 43, for example, if I type 143 and hit return. So it's very simple for entering your times. And if you wanted to put in, let's say, 69 minutes, which is obviously 1 hour and 9 minutes, put 69 in, go across. It looks like 69 there, but in this field here, it's filled in correctly for you. These have been played around so you can enter them easily, but they're not what the spreadsheet uses to calculate. These are the real time values, and they'll be used elsewhere in the sheet. Location, wherever it wants to be. And you can add your own gliding sites, you know, wherever you fly from, you can add that in this area here, down here. Okay, so that's what you put in. You put the date in. You've got a drop down for the registration. You've got a drop down for crew capacity, drop down for type of launch. You enter the time here, and you might think, well, what's the point of all this? That's the only place you put information in. Now, the next sheet automatically gives you running totals. So you've got a column. You've got a column here for number of flights, pilot under instruction, 49 there, going up to 51 there, etc. Pilot in charge solo, number of flights to date, etc. All flights, which obviously will equate exactly, will equate to the same number as I've given over the flight number here, which makes sense. Running totals in time, pilot under instruction, pilot in charge solo, etc. And then your total flying time. And this is quite useful when it comes to filling out your paper log sheet, because at the top of the page you can put for any given flight, you can put in your current time, and at the end of the page you can put in your time going forward without having to do any calculations. It's all done for you. Running totals for the gliders you've flown. Now notice there's some zeros here. These, if you buy your own glider, you can actually populate this with your glider type, and you do that here. So if you add, let's say, well, let's just go back to running totals. So we notice we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gliders, but there's a 0 there. If I go into this sheet here and add, for example, let's say, we're going to get, no, forget that for the moment. I'll put K7 in here. No. Yeah, K7. No, K6, let's say, K6E. Okay, so I've added a glider type there. If I now go back to my running total sheet, notice K6E has appeared there. And if you put that in your, also put that in your drop down in, sorry, glider types, if you add the registration and what it is here, it will magically tot up your times on your K6E there, and any other types. Now, there's a limit to how many I can put in here, so I've given you the option of 4 types of gliders. If you had a glider in the past and you don't really need to actually be logging it anymore, you can change the list and reflect that accordingly. I find this next sheet quite useful because this is running totals per year. Now, I've started it in 2014, so you can have all your flying times under instruction, solo, etc., for a given year at the end of the year. Obviously, it totals it as it's going up the year, and at the end of the year, clearly it's a total figure. Running totals in hours and minutes for given gliders, the number of flights for a given crew capacity. Clearly, I've got none in 2023 yet, and so far, well, I haven't actually, this is a fictitious figures, but you've got totals, and then types of launches per, so 2022, 19 winches, 1 aerotow, and none of the rest because I haven't put any in there. That's all done automatically. That's all done automatically from what you feed into the log sheet here. So you get loads of information calculated for you. Now, the rest of these sheets are what are called pivot tables. And when I provide you with a blank spreadsheet, they won't look very helpful. So I've deliberately not populated these yet because I'm going to show you how to do it now. So hours by type, hours by registration, launches by type, launches by registration. They've got nothing in them. So I'll go back to hours. When you have populated the log sheet, if you can possibly, you can go right back to the beginning. You can start whenever you like. I mean, clearly, ideally, you go back to the very beginning. When you've done that, if you go, let's say, to the hours sheet, click on the data tab at the top of your spreadsheet, and then click on refresh all. Magically, you get loads of figures in there. And that, by chance, has happened to all of the other sheets as well. Now, if you've got an early, sorry, not that one. If you've got an earlier version of this, when I first wrote this, it was in Excel 2010, and then it included, if we go back to the log, notice these 1990 defaults and these NA defaults. I can't do anything about that, but the original version of this counted all the 1900 flights, and that's basically thousands, which threw a spanner in the works. For whatever reason, this latest version of Excel, which I'm now running 2019, doesn't include the year 2019, which is quite useful. But if your version does, what you do is you click on this tab here. Notice actually 1900 is unselected. I didn't ask it to do that, but if next year you look at your log and you can't find 2023, what will happen is you'll need to possibly come down here and tick 2023. You only need to do it once at the beginning of the year, and then you're sorted. Just to show you something else that's quite useful about these fields. If I right click within this table area and click show field list, over on the right hand side, I've got information that I can play around with if I want to. So the year I could add there as well. And if I don't want that, it's hidden underneath my. So just to show you that again, right click in the area there, show field list. To get rid of it, you close it there. Okay, going back, just a reminder, for those of you who've got an earlier version of this, I've just recently increased the number of glider types you can fit in there. As you can see, there's quite a long list. If you've got an older version, I can modify your spreadsheet for you, or alternatively, what you can do is get a new version of this. I'll make it available. and quite simply go to your log page on your current spreadsheet and individually copy and paste each column by in turn. So that column, that column, that column, that column, that column, that column, and any comments you've written into the new version, and it should work okay. But before you do that, make a copy of your, or make sure you've saved your old version in case something goes wrong. So there's two options there. You can either copy and paste information from your old version to your new one, or I can modify your sheet for you. Ideally, do it yourself, do the copy and pasting, because it may well be that your version of this is significantly different to my current version. It's probably best you have the current version. Anyway, I hope that's been useful, and I'm now going to stop recording. He says, stop recording. Click. No, I don't want to do that. Stop share and stop recording.